I'm making a biodome pond for hourglass tree frogs using Aquascape products. Now this is just our little tabletop stuff, which is really, really cool. Do I actually have enough time to finish this before my Africa trip? It'll totally be fine by the time I get back. Oh my gosh, look at this. This is disgusting. It smells awful. We definitely got to make some changes. Hey, what's up everybody? The Pond Professor here. I'm coming to you from my home Blue Sky Farm in Sugar Grove, Illinois. About to get started on a small little unique tabletop fountain kit. Our standard tabletop fountain kit. Normally we just put water inside of this, have a little filter bed in here which gets some biomedia, and there's this pump down here in the bottom. It creates a small waterfall, and there's actually a little light kit here associated with it. But what I want to do is take this thing to the next level. I purchased this big glass sphere. It's gonna sit over the top of this. So I want to create like a little biodome, which is gonna be really, really cool. So what I want to have inside of here is some small hourglass tree frogs. These are tiny little guys. So I'd like to get a pair of them inside. And then what I want to do is try to purchase a mixture of different types of plants, both aquatic as well as some semi-aquatic type stuff that can grow in some marshy areas, and then even some mosses and stuff that I could actually attach to these pieces of wood. But I want to purchase all the different plants from South America, which is going to be similar, indigenous to the area where these frogs are from. So I shouldn't just say South America. It's the northern part of South America, Colombia, a little bit of Venezuela, but also going into Central America, Panama and Guatemala, and all the way up to the southern border of Mexico. So I'm going to try to find a mixture of plants that are going to fit that same habitat for the hourglass tree frog. I'm doing some of this work from home today, some modification here on the filter itself, and I want to make a base for this. Here in my workshop I have more woodworking tools, and I have a little bit more room to do this major construction stuff instead of trying to haul stuff back and forth to the office. But this will give me a little flexibility to at least get some of the dirty work done over here. And then what I can do is I could take all the different components back into my office, and I could start assembling the plants and the mosses and do all the little detail type stuff, which is really going to push this project over the top. I had to modify the filter on this little bowl piece, and it was just because it had like a flared edge going around it. So I ended up cutting that off in order to fit everything in place the way I wanted it. And the other thing that I did, and I'll show you the bottom of it, I cut a hole into the bottom of the bowl, and I put a bulkhead fitting in, just like I use like in our biofalls and skimmers and things like that. And that's going to allow me to drain water out of there very efficiently. So just kind of playing around with different configurations. Although this looks good by itself, but it just looks like it's kind of just its own little world. So it's like a little snapshot. What I want to try to do is bring something outside of it. So I want to kind of meld the lines between the inside and the outside. We had this cool piece of wood over at the office. I'm actually going to cut the end of this so it'll sit somewhat flat, and we're going to put a mounted platform on top of or in between some of these pieces of wood, and then I'm going to actually attach my bowl and this entire assembly in place, and it's going to kind of be tucked in between all of the log area. It's going to be a little bit funky. Tomorrow I want to bring all of these different components back to the office so I could start assembling some of the different pieces inside, hook up the pumps, the plumbing, to get the plants and that type of stuff inside of it, and really start making this thing really come together. So I brought all the pieces into the office like I said I was going to do yesterday. I have my little bowl, the tabletop fountain kit bowl. I did modify it as I mentioned. I put the bulkhead fitting in. The reason I want that is I'm going to thread a valve into the bottom. This is going to be for cleaning purposes. So periodically open it up, drain the water out of the system. The nice thing about it is we could use that for watering plants in and around the rest of the area inside of our retail store. So my next step, I wanted to extend the life of the pump and the filter without getting to it. So I cut a piece of just our regular filter pad material, cut a little notch out of it. So now you could see this pre-filter is actually going to get tucked right down in that little pocket. So now all the water is going to go through the filter, which is going to act as a pre-filter. The other thing I did, little AquaBlock panel here, that gets locked into place. What this is going to do, it's going to give me a little bit more structural integrity. So now I can get some rocks and things like that on the top of that. It's going to help to stabilize everything. I then took some pieces of cedar branches right from my home. What I love working about with cedar is it could handle moisture. It's going to be able to handle this highly humid environment. It's not going to have any issues whatsoever. It's also, I kind of screwed some of these pieces together to make it look a little bit of a tripod. So now I could set that guy in there, and it's going to lock everything into position for me. My next piece is I have my little light kit over here, which is basically going to get tucked right in this little section here. And that's going to give me the illumination. It's going to give us a little bit of additional light to get that photosynthetic process that is happening inside. The other nice thing about the light, this actually heats up a little bit. So once I have that dome in place, this is actually going to be the heating system for the actual enclosure. Just like the sun, you have all that radiation coming down, it's going to heat the atmosphere. So now I'm going to have this nice, warm, damp environment, which is going to be perfect for the hourglass tree frogs. Because there's no lip on it any longer, it kind of moves around a little bit. It's locked in on the bottom, but it's not locked up on the top. So what I want to do is I'm going to come in with a couple stainless steel screws with a bunch of washers, and I'll be able to position this exactly where I want it. It's going to lock it in place. It's going to give me that integrity that I'm looking for. I'm then going to use my waterfall foam. You've seen me use that material on 10,000 different projects. What's important about it is those little tree frogs would be able to get down inside. So what I want to do is I want to fill that void. I want to try to block that off from them so they don't get trapped or anything on the backside of that. So I use it for diverting water as well as diverting habitats for animals, for turtles and things like that. Just it could fill all of those little voids in place, and it's going to give me a little bit more structural rigidity in that space. Then I'm going to take my secondary pump. So one pump is going to operate the filter. This little secondary one, this tiny little guy right here, 70 gallons per hour of water flow, is going to take another little piping system. It's going to pump it to the top of these. And what I want to have happen is just a little dribbling water effect. The whole idea with this is to mimic that natural rainforest type of a look. So I want to recirculate that water. I want to have it dripping off of the moss and all the little plants and things like that to help increase the moisture, which is important for the plants, but more importantly, it's important for the frogs. They're the size of my thumb. I mean, not even that size. I mean, they're tiny little frogs. They're going to be really cool inside of here. Got some big plumbing and tubing to run this stuff up because we're not looking for pressure of water, we're just looking for dribbly. So the bigger diameter is just going to deliver the water to the top. It's going to dribble its way down. What I need to do is split it and then get a little bit of water, I don't know, coming up and maybe into here, and ideally coming all the way up into this nook over here, and then I'm going to start layering in all those plants around everything. But what I got to show you is the top. Hold on a second. So this guy drops over the top, except my pipe is not going to fit right now because it's not connected. It's a little precarious, but something different. You have to be able to envision it three-dimensionally, and then also how those plants are going to grow in. So this is the main structure. Now what I'm going to start to do, I got to stabilize everything. I got the filter locked in place. I have secondary filtration down on the bottom to make sure that the pumps don't get clogged up because they don't like a lot of sediment and stuff like that. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to attach some little bits of our geotextile fabric to create some little holding pots. And then I'm going to tuck the little plants in there. Then I'll wrap them with wire to hold everything in place. I will then start using my waterfall foam, and I will foam all of the mosses and stuff like that in position in and around everything. So that's cool little stuff. Finished up the plumbing, wired it all to the branches. I wanted to start dropping in some of the biggest plants because I knew those were going to be the most challenging to fit inside of the sphere. There's going to be challenges probably ongoing from a maintenance perspective, but again, that's all, you know, when you do aquariums, aquascaping and things like that, you're always maintaining that stuff to fit within a certain size system. This is so far working well. I'm going to have to trim up some of the dwarf Acorus over here, that sweet flag. The Monstera, I chopped it up pretty good. I just needed a little piece. That thing will actually get giant, so we'll definitely have to keep on top of it, but it'll look cool. It's going to kind of fill out that entire space, and the reason I want that is because that's the perfect thing for those frogs to actually attach to. They'll tuck themselves underneath those leaves and things like that, so I think that's an important piece. And then what I have to do is I'm going to start attaching more of the fabric actually around some of those branches so I could attach my orchid, which is kind of that unique little piece, as well as some of the baby's tears and all those beautiful mosses that I found. We're going to wait a few weeks until we get the frogs inside. I want to make sure everything is operating perfectly. I'm going to look at maybe getting some small isopods and things like that from a maintenance perspective so they can feed on some of the detritus and all that type of stuff that's actually going to be generated within the ecosystem. Then the final step is going to be to actually attach this entire piece to that beautiful wooden stump that I had. I want to actually have that stump kind of wrapping around the back side of this to make it look like it's part of something much larger than it actually is. A lot of little detail work. It is slow going, but it's a lot of fun. I normally don't get the chance to work work on stuff like this all the time, so having a blast with it, learning along the way like everything. So I'm moving along on the installation and trimming up some of the fabric, added in a few more plants, added a little bit of the moss. Love how that makes all the colors pop. I split up this dwarf sweet flag. It actually has a really, really sweet smell to it, which is awesome, which is where it gets its name from. And I've broken it up into 3 different pieces so I could layer it into my filter. I've pulled most of the soil off of the roots, and I'm gonna tuck that back into that filter system. You can see I put in the expanded clay media, which are very, very lightweight, and they are just loaded tiny little holes. So these are actually very common in aquaponics and things like that. Lots of microbial activity. By adding that material in, heavy surface area for all the microbial colonization. Once I finish putting my sweet flag in there, I'm then gonna cover it up with some decorative river pebbles. And the nice thing about this is all these different pieces actually come this little fountain bowl kit. And I'm also trying to create like a little hiding spot for that frog, so then that way they can get out of, you know, the daylight. I'm just breaking up some of the pieces of moss and I stick it directly onto the foam, and once it cures, everything is good. But I wanted to hide all that tubing and piping and all that type of stuff, as well as to create that really, really lush tropical look. So we're down to the final little touches right now. So what I want to do is I want to prepare the glass dome, which is going to allow us to actually have tree frogs in here. This is actually a cool little piece just by itself. So we could actually just set it up as a decorative piece, but it's not going to be the same. By putting this little biodome on top of it, this is going to allow us to take it to the next level. First things first, some anti-fog spray. So I'm just putting a little bit of this on my towel here. Just kind of swipe that around inside of there. So I've kind of done a couple little coats. I wiped it, and every time I step back and look at it, I see a little bit more, another section that I may have missed. Let's push this off to the side far enough because we could have water shooting around. All right, so I just filled it up with water. I have 1 light, 1 pump. There is a extension for another light. I'm not going to use that one, so let's get light first. Very nice. Next one is going to be the filter pump. Nice little subtle action. All I needed. Now for big guy. This is the one I am a little bit concerned about. It's leaking. Oh! All right, problem number 1. Let's go for problem number 2. Oh, boom. Oh no. And I knew it was gonna come out there. No, not what I wanted. Pump number 1 is operational. That's a good thing. Problem is pump number 2, not going as planned. So water is supposed to saturate these little pockets and dribble out down the wood, saturating everything. Over here is good. It's gonna get this damp. That's actually okay right there. So this is all good. It's that one. I might be able to attach another piece of wood here, which actually redirects the water back into the system, or I think of a couple other options, but let me think on it. To sit, have a beer, relax, the same AquaGarden discussion that we had in the Hobbit house. Maybe that's where I gotta go, make a little fire, and maybe something will just pop to me. Okay, I am back in my office. I had to totally change everything. I originally wanted it sitting on a really cool piece of driftwood. That is no longer gonna work because I was still afraid of water loss. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the bigger version of the same fountain. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a platform inside of here for it to sit. I've cut a little bit of a template here under in the one corner over here. This is where the filter is gonna be as well as the pump. So I cut a filter piece. This is the unit, one of our flow cells that I use on a wide variety of projects. I could then cover this up with Riverstone or whatever I want inside of there. I'm gonna start to assemble this, and I wanna get this operational because unfortunately I have to leave town again. So this project has kind of been sitting in the wings over here for quite a while, and I wanna make sure it gets operational. So the reason I have that hole in there is there's a little fitting down there in the bottom. What's gonna happen is the water level, it's gonna come up 2 or 3 inches up on the bottom of this. So I'll have a little shallow basin. This will be a separate filter. Plus this has its own internal filter. It's dormant, I don't think it's dead, but I did lose some of this stuff up on top. And then I wanna get that big globe on top of here so we can get everything operational here. Moment we've been waiting for. Let's get this top on so we could hopefully get everything operational. Watch out my orchid. Oh God. Oh, how's that looking? Oh. Success! Living world, an entire biodome full of life. Well, actually just plant life right now, and we'll add those tree frogs. We will also be adding in periodically crickets and things like that. So those are going to start to populate inside of this. Again, it's an important part of that recycling of all the energy that's actually being built up inside of this through the processes of photosynthesis, as well as all those other really cool things that are happening in and around our world on a daily basis. What I love about it is it's kid size. So when you look at our world, it's overwhelming. You look around the oceans and you look to see the stuff, and it's just vastness as far as you can see. But with this, it's a miniature world in just a small condensed space, but it still has all the exact same things that are happening in our world that are going to be occurring inside of here. We have that very important water cycle. That light is going to bring in, again, that's a full LED spectrum, so that's going to increase the photosynthesis. It's also going to help that evaporative transpiration process. So the moisture is going to build up inside of there, and actually it's going to turn into this like little cloud forest. You're going to have high moisture inside of there, which is perfect. Then we have the big reservoir that this is connected to. That's basically like taking a little piece of a forest, but then it's in a coastal area, and this big basin around the outside would be mimicking the ocean. So we have more moisture in a larger water volume that's actually tying all this stuff together, which is going to give us better water quality. A few more plants just on the back side. I love the dome effect, but I want to try to start to blur the lines where the dome ends and where the outside world begins. I know everybody's going to love it. Don't go anywhere. You're gonna see this incredible biodome project, but I have to run to Africa. Who actually says that? I have to go to Africa for a couple days, then to Australia, back here in 12 days. It's gotta be insane. See, that didn't actually take long. Now let's check out the biodome. Hopefully it held up. Not what I was hoping for. Did not want all that humidity and moisture in there. So I thought I had enough air gap along that bottom edge, but clearly not. So I'm guessing all that moss and stuff I put in there actually sealed up that entire bottom. So I was hoping for that nice crystal clear look going inside of here. Let's pull this thing off and actually see what actually happened. And by the look of it, we definitely got to make some changes. So let's pull this top off. Oh my gosh, look at this. This is disgusting. Deflated. I was actually hoping to see kind of like that bright green look of all the moss, but I think I oversaturated, like definitely. I mean, look at that. I mean, it's just saturated. This moss totally died. My fern died. Some of the chorus here, this dwarf sweet flag, did well here, but it died at, like, look at that, totally melted away. I mean, it's gone. My pilea, the baby steers, that's gone as well. Oh, my favorite part, the orchid. Look at this thing. It's just like the leaves are falling. Oh my gosh. Actually, I don't even want to show this on camera. I feel awful because I don't like killing stuff. But I guess that goes to show you, actually, the little Tillandsia even looks a little bit frazzled there. I think it was just way too much moisture inside of this. So we got the light in here, LED light. It's probably heating this entire area up, so we don't have a good air transfer. That's creating this warm, humid environment. I think we need more airflow going through it. I mean, the pump is still operating, that type of stuff, but I also think what I need to do is probably cycle the water going off and on in this area so it doesn't completely saturate it, just a little bit too damp. So I think I'm gonna have to do a total, unfortunately, again, redesign design. We had to make the changes because I had that leak. Now I'm gonna have to make changes because the biodome is actually too much of a seal. I have to get more airflow going through it. I may actually have to change up the plantings. Plus, I just returned from my Africa trip, so I have an entire water feature design that I actually have to complete here in the next few days. There's nothing like a good problem and a challenge. Unfortunately, I thought I had this thing wrapped up. And the thing is, look how tiny this is. I mean, it's actually small, right? It's actually a tiny little feature. So I do massive, massive features and I don't have this much challenge. But it all goes to show you what you get good at. It's a passion of mine. I love kind of creating these cool little ecosystems, especially for these tiny little frogs, as well as the other things that are going to be living inside of it. So this will be one amazing project someday.